obviously today we're very lucky to be joined by one of our fellow board members. To be honest, she's been absolutely killing it in the board. I'll let her tell her story, but we really wanted to ask Rupal Patel, who's going to be joining us, to share her experiences, because it has been sort of initially something started off quite challenging, and the way she's come through using exactly what sort of Dan's been preaching has been really phenomenal. So a really good example of walking the talk in our community. So I know it's going to be of lots of value. So just to remind you, every other week we're going to be hosting these interviews with KPIs from the property industry to really focus on how they're dealing with the crisis. So it's like a behind the scenes look at what they're up to in order to help inspire us, motivate us in our businesses to do the same. Because obviously when you see someone implement it, it takes it to a whole new level. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rupal to the stage, if you like. So, you know, I've known Rupal since she joined Property Entrepreneur a couple of years ago, but she actually has been in the UK for 10 years. She's obviously American by birth, for those of you that don't know her. Probably best known for the fact that she used to be in a US government intelligence organization, and she's famous for her CIA to CEO mantra. And so not only is she a property investor, not only does she do property development, managing HMOs, rent to rents, she's obviously a board member. She also has her own training company where she inspires women in business, you know, sharing examples of what women are different women are achieving in different businesses in order to build a community to inspire them to become the future business leaders that we quite frankly need in this world, to level up the playing field and get much more women at the top, at that CEO level of their own businesses. So like I said, she's been a board member now for the whole of this year. So I've got to know on a whole other level, which has been absolutely fantastic. So enough from me. I'm going to introduce her now. If Rupal, are you there?
I am. Hello. Good morning.
Welcome. Good morning. Good morning. How you doing?
Good. Really good. Thank you.
Good. Where are you streaming in from, just so people know where you're based?
From our office, our home office, and the light is a bit funny because the sun keeps coming in and out. So, but yeah, I'm at home. Nicely
done. I have the same problem here. The sun's no, the sun's always out. I'm raging.
For you.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Well, the weather is beautiful here, so I'm very lucky.
Good.
So, yes. So did I actually mention the name of your training company, Entreprenora? Is that how it is?
That's perfect. Right? Yeah, you got it right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so a nice, clever play on words there. So, Rupal, I'm sure you've been, well, I know you've been listening to all the broadcasts that we've been doing, and obviously we've been talking about it loads in the board WhatsApp and in the boardrooms. In our War Room series, we've kind of been talking about 3 ways you deal with this crisis. We've got strategy, finance, and communication.
Yeah.
And obviously Dan loves strategy, so most of it is always about strategy. So what I'm really interested in is how this war, you know, on COVID-19 has affected your businesses in these areas. First of all, we're going to start with strategy, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. So, like, what's your strategy been through this period, and how have you tried to limit the downside?
Yeah. So the strategy has basically been exactly that: is to basically try to stem the bleed of cash, and or protect the income coming in, as well as you said, sort of minimizing the downside. So sort of pretty early on, before we went into lockdown, one of the things that we did, because as you said, we do have some rent to rent, and we very rigorously and very consistently look at all of our P&Ls and monthly cash flow and all of that kind of stuff. And so we knew where some of the holes were, where some of the potential savings were, where some of the, not really fat, but some of the nice to haves were, and just started looking at very carefully what are the things that we can either minimize or reduce or change, so that the value we're providing is the same, but we're protecting our income. And then similarly, sort of going a bit into the bigger picture, because we have such a good handle on our P&Ls, we know which properties are the better performing versus the less good performing ones. And over the longer term, our plan was always, at least with our rent to rents, was to start handing them back over the next 12 to 18 months. And in some ways, this is sort of the silver lining that's come of COVID, but we've been able to accelerate the process of handing over some of those because of the conversations we've had with our rent-to-rent landlords. So that's been the overarching strategies, as you said, sort of protect the income, minimize the downside, reduce costs wherever possible without reducing service quality or value, to our tenants. And yeah, just starting to, push forward some of the things that we had planned for the longer term.
That's really interesting, actually, because we've talked on the War Room about using this as a chance to get closer to your dreams, not further away.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this has just accelerated what was already the vision.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I hate, it always annoys me when people are like, oh, well, there's a silver lining to everything. Because sometimes, when you're in the midst of something really difficult and stressful, it's hard to, you just sort of want to punch those people in the face. And so, but it has been true. And I think that's been the good thing is I almost weekly now have made it a point of being like, why am I glad that COVID-19 happened? And some of it is business related stuff, of course. As I said, accelerating some of the things that we had wanted to do, over the 12 to 18 months, but some of it's been personal. And again, without sort of being naive about it, I think there are some really good things that this crisis has brought about in both my personal life as well as in my business.
I couldn't agree more. So in terms of then looking at the medium to longer term and the upsides, you talk about upsides. What upsides have you seen in your rent-to-rent business or your other businesses in the sort of medium to longer term?
Yeah, I think some of it has been through the communications, to be honest, is really sort of deepening the relationships that we have with our rent-to-rent landlords, and the conversations that we've had to have about how we're going to together go through the next couple of months have been really fruitful, and also really good at identifying the landlords who are basically everyone's shown their face, right? And so we sort of now, again, can fast track some of the landlords giving back the properties to some of the landlords whose values just aren't in line with ours anymore, or who have been a little bit, just a little bit less in tune with, I think, the way we like to do business, well, without going into too much detail. And I get, different people have different priorities, but for us, it's really been about value, about service, and about, fairness, transparency, all of that kind of stuff. And not everybody operates that way. So, at least now we've been able to see who's who, and can then plan our business accordingly. So for the medium to long term, again, it's just sort of, maybe swapping out some of the ones that we decide to give back with ones that we were thinking of keeping, et cetera, based on, the relationship with the landlords. Because this is going to sound, Dan will kill me for saying this, maybe he won't, I don't know. But sometimes I've really come to realize that it's okay to leave money on the table. And some of the properties that are high contenders for being given back sooner than later are ones that they make money, of course, we're not sort of in this as a charity, but we're happy to let go of that income because the other things that come with it just aren't worth it. So that's been one thing from the property side of things. The other opportunity that I think has been really lovely to explore and deepen is I'm a very, very extroverted person. I'm very much I love community. I love what we've got here. I love seeing people in person and hugging them and feeling the energy and having that in-person exchange. But one of the things that I've realized from all of the Zoom calls and all of the online stuff that we've been doing is that there's some things that aren't diluted by doing them online. Some things can move very, very successfully, like all of the stuff that's been happening with the War Room. And of course, the community is important and it'll be great to go back to normal. But, the value that we can share with others is, as long as there's value there, it doesn't matter the medium in which it's conveyed necessarily. So that's what I've been doing a bit more, both for Entreprenora as well as for our property business, is just, is there more ways to serve more people by doing more things online? And I don't think, well, it's probably accelerated something that would have happened in the longer term, but I'm glad that it's happened. It's because it's counterintuitive to who I am as a person. But I've been finding so much value in doing all of the online community work that we've been doing.
that remote working. It just sounds like you to get close to things that are your highest values, right? So it's like you're just playing to your highest values, and it's okay to leave money on the table when it doesn't match your values. I think that if life by design is that, so value more things more than money. So you're quite happy to leave money on the table if you don't have to work with a landlord you don't see eye to eye with anymore, or if rent to rent isn't getting you closer to your life by design, or whatever it is. So
and again, not to be sort of blasé about money, because again, at different stages in your business, it's more important than at others. But thankfully, we're at the point in our business now where we have the option to make very clear value-based judgment calls where the money is a very, very, very low sort of priority, and everything else matters that much more. If we were first getting started, I'd be like, shit, we got to suck it up and just do it, because we need to replace my income, we need to retire a guy and all that kind of stuff. But now, thankfully, all of that stuff, we've passed that stage, and so we can make decisions that we feel better about without the money being the paramount thing that is, sort of on our minds.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think it's good to acknowledge that not everyone's in that place, but you will get there. So just talking about money and finance then, actually. So what, I mean, what's been your approach to finance, and have you benefited from any of the government supports that have been put out there at all?
Yeah, so on the government support side of things, so far, no. We've got one application outstanding, and then we'll definitely be putting in another application for the
Skibbles.
Yeah, well, for the new 50K sort of quick.
Oh, the 50K,
yeah, that one. But I also don't want to be too principled about this, because we and ah about what we do and what we don't do, and part of me is like, oh well, just if we apply for the loan and we get it and we qualify, great. We can just have it as a backstop if we ever need it. But it can't hurt to have. And then every now and then I'm like, but if we get that money, does it mean somebody else who might need it more doesn't? Anyway, so I've just decided to apply. If we get it, great. If we get to the point where we feel like actually we can give it back early, we can do that as well. I mean, I don't think they're going to say no. But yeah, I mean, nothing has come in yet, so we're not in that position to make a judgment call just yet. As far as the other sort of cash flow side of things, so interestingly, the HMOs that we own and our single lets and some of our conversion projects that we've retained, those have all been really, really solid. The income from those hasn't been affected at all. It's our rent to rents that have really been the ones where we're hurting, because again, as everybody who knows who does rent to rents, your fixed costs are just painful, especially with that monthly lease payment. So the way we've sort of tried to manage the finances there, in addition to some of the cost cutting and sort of P&L walking the line kind of stuff we've done, is having just really, really candid conversations with our landlords and just saying, and again, not after the fact, not now that we're 6 weeks into lockdown and we're like, holy cow, what's going to happen? But when we saw the writing on the wall, sort of mid-March, we started reaching out proactively to our landlords, and we're just like, hey, this is the current situation. This is how many rooms are filled. This is how many are void, or this is how many will come void in the next couple of months. We didn't give necessarily specific numbers, but we're like, given the uncertainty in the market, what's happening, blah, 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 let's just have an open conversation. And that was where Dan was absolutely brilliant in helping sort of come up with a great communications strategy of sorts. Was at first, because I sometimes go in all guns blazing. And I was ready to go with like, hey, landlords, like, here's what we propose. We've got this option or this option or this option. And, Dan gave some really sound advice and was like, hey, instead of putting a gun to their heads effectively, or going in with a preconceived solution, have an open conversation. What can we do? Let's just talk. And also the value of not having those conversations just over email, but sending the initial sort of, hey, heads up, this is what's happening, and then following it up with a phone call, because so much can get misconstrued or missed or misinterpreted in email. And so those conversations were so fruitful, because the landlords themselves came up with solutions that we would never have planned to propose. So in one instance, we got a really, really generous rent reduction, as well as a rent forgiveness. In a couple of cases, the landlords themselves were like, hey, if this is no longer viable for you, you can give us back the rent to rent early, and we won't ask for, a minimum notice period. Just, if you've got 3 out of 4 rooms empty, just find something, so once that 4th tenant moves, you can hand it back, kind of thing. So those conversations were absolutely key. And, we're at month's end of this April was probably the first month where all of the effects of everything we're gonna hit. And our income was fine because all of our tenants are professional tenants who have, really secure jobs. They're getting paid, so they're still paying their rent. So that was a huge relief. On top of all of this stuff that we have agreed with our landlords as far as like, forgiveness or reductions or delayed payments, et cetera. And, as of today, we still have money in the bank from, this month, which it's not a huge amount, and clearly it's a lot less than it would have been otherwise, but it makes all the difference in the world. So that's what we did, and those conversations were key.
That's amazing. I think that is the most impressive thing. I think, because I remember where you don't mind me saying, when we started off a couple of months ago, I know you were asking questions because there were lots of your tenants had given notice.
Yeah,
so
we had
pre-crisis.
16.
Yeah, but pre-crisis, it was looking like you were going to be in for a rough patch anyway. Like it was one of those patches of like, oh, hang on, this is looking a bit unusual, and then you chuck COVID in, which makes it 10 times worse.
Yep.
So where you were then versus where you are now, like what would you say that like mentally, financially, how's it been? Because that has been a roller coaster for you, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And I would say, again, without being insensitive to what's happening with others who have it a little bit harder, in some ways, COVID was a really, really good thing because, again, of those 16 voids that we had coming down the pipeline, 8 of them have immediately been taken care of because we're giving those rent to rents back. So that's halved those, the concerns and the anxiety around those. And then the others are being managed by the rent reductions or the, all of the other agreements that we had in place with our rent to rent landlords. And so we've really got about 4 or 5 voids, which is pretty normal. And thankfully, again, before we went into lockdown, we went around the few houses that we could go to and did some video viewing. So we've already filled 1 room through video viewings and virtual tours, and we've got another 2 to 3 sort of in the process there, that seem like they're keen. So it in a really weird way, it took so much of the pressure away. And obviously no one would have wished this on the world or on any of us, but the way we've been able to manage it has really helped.
Well, that's what I've seen. Like, it's funny to see you kind of like reflecting on it, because I've seen that 16 voids in March, and sort of like, guys, any top tips? What can I do? And then as you've laid it out there straight away with some good communication with your stakeholders, 8 of those voids were taken care of thanks to COVID. And now, and then you said you've only got 4 actual voids now, because the other 4 were, rent forgiveness leniency, of which one of those has been rented with a video viewing, which we were talking about in the board ages ago. So, actually, you've gone from 16 staring down the face of reality to 3.
I know.
And you might have £50,000 in the bank, and presumably some of this rent forgiveness and stuff has potentially added a little bit more cash flow, etc. to the business. So I think just hats off to the you've nailed that. So the strategy was right. As usual, Dan with the Mystic Meg with his crystal ball, add the finishing touches to the strategy. You're all over the finance side of things, walking the line, your P&Ls from built, assets from last year, having those things put in the business, and cost cutting, and then communicating the way. Obviously, you're a great communicator, so to pick up the phone and to talk like the way you have, it's worked. So congrats. So I think that's very impressive. So
thank you.
Well done for you. So aside from business, from a well-being point of view, you mentioned like how not just business, how your well-being and stuff had improved. How have you been keeping like mentally and physically fit during lockdown?
So the physical side has been easier, I will say, in some weird ways. I will share with everyone now because I'm at the point where I can, but I'm pregnant, so we're expecting our second baby in October. Yay! Yay, thank you.
Round of applause or whatever.
Yay!
Did you get a round of applause for being pregnant? I don't know.
That's a cool. I mean, the baby
It's out
itself
there
is
now.
celebration enough. So that's
Me or you
cool.
obviously in the board, but everyone knows now. So.
Yeah. So ironically, and I don't know what this is, maybe it's sort of that selfless part of me that, or that sort of nurturing side, but like the last time I was pregnant and this time I really amped up my fitness level. I was like at the gym or running or doing whatever I could, like 4 or 5 times a week, whereas sort of on average, let's be honest, it's usually like 2 to 3 times. And so I think that has helped. The fact that my favorite personal trainer has started doing online PT sessions has made a huge difference, because she is like the best just surge of positivity and energy. I mean, she kicks your ass, but at the end of those 45 minutes, you just feel so totally uplifted. So that's helped, doing those virtual PT sessions with her. And then again, having to cook at home all the time has been a blessing in disguise. I do not enjoy cooking. I love good food, and I love having other people do it for me. But obviously we can't avail ourselves of any of that now. And so I'm just, yeah, I'm taking supplements, and I'm drinking lots and all of that kind of stuff. Having a toddler at home as well all day long keeps me active, because like this Fitbit.
A what? Sorry, a toddler? Did you say?
A toddler, yeah, because chasing after her and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm easily sort of nailing 10,000 steps without leaving the house. So again, having her at home because of COVID has helped my health. Sometimes my mental health suffers from having to juggle a child as well as everything else, but hey-ho. So the physical's actually been really good. Some days are easier than others, of course. And I think that's been the mental ride, probably more than anything else. And I would say the first 3 weeks mentally were really, really tough. And I hate to put it this way, but I was so resentful of the situation, of having to handle all of like the big business stresses on top of having to keep my daughter entertained. And it just felt so hard. And it was one of those like, oh, I'm going to wallow in self-pity, woe is me sort of situations. And every night and every morning, I remember waking up like, F this, like, there's just too much to do, not enough time. How am I going to get this all done? Blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, we all have our own sort of internal voice that gets us out. And the thing that I found has always helped me is just physical movement of any kind, not exercise, but literally just getting out of bed, because then you have no choice but to do something. And that one step following, and then it's just trying to do as much normal stuff as possible, showering, not staying in your pajamas all day long, little things, but sort of mentally add up. But also having that mindset around, well, you can either sit there and admire the problem and be a victim, or you can get your shit together and just do what you can. And I think maybe, Adam, I think you brought this up in one of the other War Room sessions, but that Dale Carnegie book has been absolutely fantastic, because one of my favorite lessons from How to Stop Worrying and Start Living is that whole thing about the worst case scenario. Like the anxiety in those first 3 weeks was like all of the what ifs. None of us knew what was happening with anything, with the economy, with the world, with our health, with families, with our businesses, etc. And all of that like chaos and noise in our heads, for me anyway, was really, really overwhelming. And so I would do that exercise of like, okay, well, what is absolute worst that happens? None of our tenants pay their rent. We default on this and we can't pay that, and blah, 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 blah. And then doing that thing of like, well, my goal now is to just accept that worst case scenario, and then with every ounce of energy I possibly have to work as hard as possible to mitigate the extremes from that downside. So, sort of hyping myself up and doing that mental exercise helped a lot. I think it also helped, having a very, just be, having the board, of course, and just using that as a sounding board. My partner is, we've been lucky in that we just are both like, you know what, I feel like shit today. Like, I don't want to do anything, or this feels really hard and overwhelming. And then the other person will figure out, a way to either buoy them or just give them the time and the space that they need. And I think sometimes like, and this is counterintuitive again to a lot of the like go-getter, action-oriented side of all of us, but sometimes you just need to be and to stop doing and to just like give yourself that time to absorb the intensity of what you're feeling, because we can't wish it away and we can't push it to the side. Otherwise it's going to come out in some other crazy way. And I found, to be honest, and I hate to say this, but like those first few weeks, like I would get really stressed out and then take it out on my family, and it's hard not to do that, but it's also hard. It's also terrible to do that, And so anyway, I just found that like giving myself time, giving myself space, just doing the best I can in any given moment. And I think one of the things I shared with all of our group yesterday was that whole idea of like, now is not the time to be perfect. We all have to have standards of excellence. We all do have standards of excellence and performance, but like, my gosh, it's so hard in the best of times. Like, just give ourselves a bit of breathing room for everything we are doing. Stop focusing on how much we haven't got done today or how much is left to do. And like, sometimes you just got to pat yourself on the back for the little things that you did get done. You made lunch, or you like fixed a leaking tap in your house, or you just, you got out of bed. Sometimes it's the little things that are the hardest, but it all counts. So, it's, just try not to beat yourself up with your standards, and, don't hang yourself with them.
Thanks so much. There's so many tips in there. Like for everyone who hasn't read that book yet or bought that book, the Dale Carnegie book, Start Living, Stop Worrying, is just amazing. It was Rupal who suggested it. I've given her credit on the war rooms, and really good to get that insight about what it's like, from a be at home perspective, from being a mum, not only a mum, but a mum to be again, and all the rest of it, and just, the interaction with the partner. If you had to give 3 top tips, like real short, punchy tips, you probably covered them already, but just so people can take them away, what would you say?
Yeah. So it's a mix of tough. It's a bit tough love. I would say the first one is, so this is the love part, is be kind to yourself. So if you're eating a bit more chocolate or some more carbs, or your workout routine is sort of taking a bit of a hit, don't beat yourself up. Try to get back on the wagon, whatever phrase you want to use, but like, it's okay. And also, actually, I'm not a nutritionist, so Akash would probably kill me for saying this, but I have a theory, a totally amateur theory, that the reason we are, perhaps some, not all, but some of us are eating more or eating certain things more is because, one, meal times are one of the few anchors we have left in our days, and we don't really have schedules anymore. But 2, our brains are on overdrive. Like, in addition to the normal stuff we're having to think about, everything else that we're dealing with, whether it's kids at home or family members who might be sick or other things going on, like, our brains need fuel. So don't kill yourself by eating crap, but also don't, beat yourself up if you're eating a little bit more or less in line with something that you had planned, because now's not the time to, like I said, hang yourself with your standards, as long as you're not damaging yourself. So be kind to yourself, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. Second thing is, don't shy away from having those difficult conversations, whether it's with your landlords, your stakeholders, your tenants, your partners at home. I have had, some of the most fruitful conversations I've had with my husband, for example, have been like, I need time. Like, I need you to take our daughter and leave the house for 2 hours, because I just need to be alone in our space without any threat of distraction. And it's not easy to say, and it's not easy to hear, but you guys, like, what's the alternative? That you turn into a banshee or a monster with your family at home? It's sort of juggling that. So be kind to yourself, but don't be afraid to have difficult conversations. And I guess sort of in line with that, like, ask for what you need, whether it's help from the PE members, whether it's a question or support that you need from friends, from family, from whoever it is. Just ask. It doesn't mean that you'll always get it, but at least you've given the other person an opportunity to help you. And again, it might be your bank manager, it might be your best friend, it might be your partner, or it might just be your kid, to be like, please just go and sit and just stare at the television for a few hours so that I can have a few quiet minutes to myself. But whatever it is, as long as you're not being a horrible human being, like, just ask. And I think, again, now's not the time to be precious or overly like martyred about anything. We're all going through a tough time, and yeah, just be kind to yourself, have those difficult conversations, and ask for what you need.
Nice. Magic. Absolutely magic. Thank you for that. That's brilliant. Guys and girls, if you've got any questions, please post them in the chat. Rupal, I'm sure she's happy. Any specifics around what she's done, perhaps with her rent-to-rents, or even at home? By the sounds of it, she's absolutely bossing that situation as well. If there's a good thing, maybe guys on this call, I don't know, maybe there's two sides to the story. What do you reckon? But listen, I actually had a question.
Sure.
You talked about your rent-to-rents loads, and I think it's super impressive. And there's lots of people with rent-to-rents in the community. What's been going on with Entreprenora? Now that you've had potentially now getting a bit more time, or getting, like, what's been going on in that space? Because you've been pretty prolific in, like, putting out content and stuff. For those of you who don't know, Rupal has a podcast, and she's a big content machine. So what's been going on that side of things?
Oh, that's been it's been such a bright spark in all of this going on. Because again, for me, community is absolutely everything. So one of the things that I've been doing more for the Entreprenora community. So sorry, boys, I'm not trying to exclude you, but so we've been doing so I did a town hall meeting, again, just to sort of come together and help support each other. I've been doing virtual co-working sessions. So you just come together, sit quietly for 90 minutes. And it's nice to just know there's another person, especially for people who are working by themselves at home. It's nice to know that there's someone potentially who's there without being there. We've done a few just sort of workshops. And then what I'm super, super excited about is I've got my own Entreprenora boardroom, which was supposed to have launched in April. That's gotten pushed back now to May. But yeah, instead of, again, we've had to make some adjustments to when and where and how it happens. But so we're now launching the Entreprenora boardroom on the 15th of May. And it's going to start out with virtual sessions, of course, until we can go back into meeting in person. So lots of exciting things happening there.
That's really cool. I'd actually forgotten you were doing that. That is actually that is so exciting. That is super exciting. So good for you. And what I've got a question actually from Garrett over in Ireland. So he said, thanks for your insight. It's been really useful. He's wondering, are you out of property now, or are you still looking at property? And if you are, what opportunities are you looking at over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. So most of our property stuff has been focused for the past, I would say, 2 to 3 years on development sites. So because that is such a long-term play, that hasn't stopped. To be honest, my husband has been the one who's been really spearheading that because so much more of my time and attention is now focused on Entreprenora. But that hasn't stopped. He's still reaching out to landowners. He's getting a good response rate. I think I'm looking at our leaderboard because he keeps track.
Nice, love it.
During COVID, he's sent out 367 letters and gotten responses from 61 of them. So these are sort of preliminary positive responses that he's then having to have follow-up conversations over the phone with, et cetera, et cetera. So he's just planting the seeds, and that from the development side of things, that's still going as much as possibly can. And then for the next, I think our plan in giving back those rent-to-rents was also to sort of cycle in new HMOs that we own, because again, I don't know what the financials are like for others, but for us, one of our HMOs that we own gives us the same income as about 3 rent-to-rents. So we're now, we've given back 2. We're in the process of giving back probably another 2. And so we're passively looking for HMO opportunities just because, in the next couple of months, we imagine that there is going to be some scope for it to be a bit more of a buyer's market. And actually, even before COVID happened, because of all of the tax changes and landlords and blah, 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 blah. So, so we are passively looking for HMOs. We'll probably start actively looking for HMOs in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, and then the development stuff ongoing. And interestingly, for everybody out there who's working with private investors, the other thing I wanted to say is that, again, having conversations, don't presume anybody is sort of not interested in investing anymore, because we've had 3 investors come to us at this point being like, hey, we're ready to rumble because, you know, the stock market's so volatile. We've got this liquid savings that's sitting there earning us absolutely nothing. Do you have any investments that we can funnel our funds into? And so, you know, yes, of course, a lot of people are sort of shrinking back from the market, but a lot of people are looking to enter the market as well. So, you know, if you had investors that you've been talking to over whatever time period, just check back in with them. You never know. Yeah, so we're going to continue to sort of work with our investors, look for opportunities, and then the developments is going to be the main focus.
Amazing. What a good overview. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you said about the investors. I know we both know Shiv's been absolutely killing it with his portfolio building. I'm gonna have to get him on next, because he absolutely encapsulates that as well, like how you know how not everyone's fearful and people are getting in, and so that would be a benefit to everyone. So I've got everyone's congratulating you and Guy on that amazing response rate, by the way. Well, obviously, like 61 responses from 350 letters is amazing.
Yeah, he's pretty good at
sounds like you are a cracking team, you two. And is there any other, the question from Richard actually is about that, is there anyone else in your team apart from you two? Not at all. You're not delegating to anyone, VAs, EAs?
We have one VA, and he tends to be my VA more than anything else. But yeah, it's just the 2 of us and our VA.
Cool. And have you upped that person's workload or decreased that person's workload?
If anything, it's decreased, because before he was doing a lot of our just tenant management side of things, and because tenants aren't really doing anything, like, I don't know if others are finding it, but like the volume of communication from tenants has really, really dropped. And I think also for us anyway, a lot of ours have moved home to be with their parents during this time. So some of the houses have maybe 1 or 2 people living in them. So actually from a management side of things, it's also been really quiet.
Yeah, we've kind of experienced the same. So good. All right then. Well, if there's no more questions, everyone's saying thank you. So yeah, really enjoyed that interview. Thanks so much for joining us, Rupal. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thanks for your insight, your honesty, like your energy is just amazing. So thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
I'll talk to you soon, no doubt. Take care.
Sounds wonderful. Thanks so much, Adam. Bye, guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye, everyone. See you all later.